Welcome to another very, very special episode of Dead Men Talk. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to welcome my guest this evening. He is one of the guys responsible for a lot of the early memories I've got of stand-up comedy and some of my favorites. He's worked with the best in the business. He is one of the best as well. You may or may not know him, whether you know him like I do as Joe Pasquale's twin brother Raynard, or indeed the man who had his hand up lower, the Loafer, for the Brian Conley Show. I welcome to the show Ray Tizzard. How you doing, mate?
Right, Chris, how are you, man?
Yeah, all good, mate.
Danger.
We had to start with that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'd tell you what. I mean, I when I first sort of reached out to you, I wasn't really expecting it to come to anything, I must admit, and I was so grateful when you came back to me and agreed to come on, because I mean, we'll touch them. There's so many early memories I've got of my favorite, comedians and that, and you sort of literally had your hand in with a couple of the guys who I really sort of watched so much back then.
Bless you, mate.
So I guess the natural where I like to normally start with these kind of things, if we wind it back to the beginning, where did you discover comedy for yourself? And not only who were your favorites, who did you grow up admiring, but when did you find you had a talent of your own to make people laugh?
It's really strange. When I discovered comedy quite early on, and one of my favorite comics is Danny Kaye.
Okay.
So going right early back, and there's a film that he did called Wonder Man, it's quite a rare film, quite hard to get, but it was on Channel 4. I remember watching it late one night, and basically Danny Kaye plays himself as a librarian who's quite straight-laced, but also his gangster brother who gets killed at the beginning of the film.
Okay.
And the idea, it's quite a bizarre film, but it's quite a good film. And the premise is that the gangster brother, who's quite Larry, comes back and takes over the librarian's body to try and find out who killed him and why.
Okay.
And I just remember watching that, and it just made me giggle as his kid.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just really got into it, and I loved Danny Kaye, the way he worked. He was very quick on stuff, and all these little routines that he used to do together, and it's facial expressions. And for me, it's always been about facial expressions. One of my most favorite comics, one of my early memories, and it's a big influence for Raynard, is Adrian Edmondson.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Dangerous Brothers, which is one of my favourite things, which was on Saturday Night Live when I was a kid, right. And I was used to watch him and Rick Mel blow themselves up on a nightly basis. And it's just a lot of Raynard's facial features and the way I express myself sometimes comes a lot from watching them early anarchic comics, especially Adrian Edmondson, the way he used to do that, and all of that, and things like that. Danger. It's all that is, what I mean, and I just loved watching that sort of stuff. And Hal and Pace, I was a big fan of Hal and Pace as well.
Yeah.
And I was quite lucky. I used to work for Brian Conley. Was one of the first people I worked with, and Brian's manager at the time was looking after Hal and Pace. I remember doing the Brian Conley Show at Bromley as this really young 21-year-old kid. And at the end of the night, the last film party, Hal and Pace come to it, and I was just in awe looking at them, being that lucky to meet these guys.
Yeah.
But Danny Kaye was a massive influence, and again, Rick Mel, Adrian Emerson, Young Ones, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And also, really randomly, I've always liked Pee Wee Herman, who's an American comic.
Okay, yeah, I know. Yeah, my little ones a couple of years ago got quite into his shows, oddly enough.
He's great. I mean, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and I mean, it was the first film that Tim Burton made, Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, looking back on it, it's so obvious now that Tim Burton was involved. Yeah.
It's quite quirky, and I just loved it. Again, Pee Wee just makes me laugh. I like that idea of being, and I've always been that kind of way as well. Just like I'm a massive kid. Yeah. And it's just like, mucking about and having a laugh. That's what it is for me, really, to be fair.
It's like a bit of innocence, isn't there? That's what I liked, I'm jumping about probably, but your character of Raynard played off against Joe Pasquale Joe Pasquale wasn't like straight-laced or anything, but he tried to be the admonishing big brother, didn't he? Sort of telling you to get back in your box, and you were always the one just to act up. It was fantastic.
So it's always great being that like naughty child.
Yeah. And so when were your first kind of movements into performing yourself, if you can sort of remember where it all started back then?
Yeah, well, when we were kids, I grew up in East Ham in London. That's where I'm from originally, and my mum and dad bought a caravan on a lovely place called Canvey Island.
Oh yeah,
in Essex.
Yeah.
It's a little holiday park called King's Holiday Park, and we used to go there as kids. So we went there as kids for the 6 weeks holiday and stuff, and eventually, when mum and dad decided they were going to move to Canvey Island from London. And when they did that, I'd just been going to this caravan park for about 6 or 7 years, and I got to know the guys, and I started collecting glasses and stuff in the nightclub when I was about 17, 18, working there as a little job, left school. Obviously I'm a bit of a div, so I didn't know what I was going to do, so I just mucked about a bit. So I was just started collecting glasses, and the guy that was doing the sound and lights at the time wanted a Thursday night off, so he said, would I do the disco? And I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a go, mate. What have I got to do? And he's like, push his buttons. So I was like, yeah, great. And at the time there was a host there called Johnny Clark. It was brilliant. It was like the the main host at the club. We used to have cabarets in like Brian's and Bobby Davros and Duncan Orville and people like that. And I just started doing bits and pieces on the sound and lighting, and then one day they just said, Duncan Orville needs someone to come out. And I was like, yeah, I'd do it. And I'd always had this youngest kind of look when I had hair and everything. I looked like this little 12-year-old kid. And I used to take his pints of lagers out. And of course, doing that at the time, that was part of his act, where he'd take the mickey out of this young lad that had come out. So, and from there, the host of the caravan park picked up on this, and he was like, would you come and do a few bits for me? And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I was working with a band at the time called Triple Cream, who were like the resident band there. And they sort of said, one of them said that I looked like the Riddler from Batman, who was played by Frank Gorshin.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, oh. And so that became my nickname. They used to call me the Riddler, and then they dressed me up in green lycra. And that's where it all sort of sprang from, to be fair. But by being there, I quite luckily got to work with a few other bands, and one of the bands was a band called Rhythm of the Night, and they were Brian's backing band at the time. So through that, I was their roadie, and then through that, I got to work with Brian. And then Brian just said one day, would you come on and dance? I've had this idea for a gag. I want to go, ladies and gentlemen, the Brian Conley dancers. And will you just come on in a pair of pants? And I went, yeah, I'll do that. As I do all the time. I just go, yeah, I'll do it. I'm quite easy like that.
Yeah.
And that's where it's all sort of stemmed from there, really. It's quite bizarre how it started.
That's okay. So that was sort of your that's how you met Brian Conley.
Yeah.
Did you then get the gig sort of, obviously, Larry the Loafer? Was that your first gig with him, or were you involved in any other way with him before?
Yeah, I was involved in his touring side of stuff before I actually did any of the television stuff with him. And I was just lucky to be about. And when he was doing that Brian Conley Show in Bromley, the first one we did, I wasn't actually Larry on that, but I asked if I could go along and watch how it's put together. I was quite a young lad, and I was interested in how it worked, So I did. I went along and watched it all and how it was put together. And at the time, there was a gentleman called Colin Edmonds, who was Bob Monkhouse's writer.
Okay.
And I was quite interested. And I had a couple of ideas for gags, and I didn't know how to work it or how to put it together. And I spoke to Colin, and he just gave me some good advice and tips. And then from that, when Brian then moved to LWT, I've been touring with him for about a year then. And Nigel Lithgow, who was the producer of the show at the time, Nasty Nigel, had seen me do stuff on stage with Brian, and he knew that I did Larry on stage. And him and Brian both sort of said, well, it's only fair if Ray's doing it on the tour, we should use him on the TV show. And I was just like made up. I'm like 21, 22, and here I am being Larry the Loafer. And then from that as well, Colin brought in the idea of Dangerous Brian having a stunt coordinator. So I became Nearly Dangerous Norris, which is probably the really early starts of Raynard.
Okay.
And that's where the pink lycra comes from, where I do Raynard. I don't know if you've seen it on stage.
I have, yeah.
With the cape, that originally was Nearly Dangerous Norris, and and it started from there. And again, when I was working with Colin, I got into writing a few of the little bits of Larry. I did a lot of writing for Larry, and I did a lot of writing for Dangerous Brian. I just to write some of the gags, and it was really clever. Colin taught me. It was like, well, you watch a video or a TV show or something, and then when they're about to do the punchline, you pause it, and then you think, well, I reckon the punchline is going to be this. Okay. And if it is that, great, you've got a good brave comedy. And if it isn't, you've written another gag anyway, So it's quite a good way of doing it, and it's So I was really lucky again, just That's right brilliant. Place, right time.
That's
and
cool.
Brian, and Brian's dad as well I love Brian's dad, and he really looked after me And him and Brian, and again, I owe Brian so much because he helped me out so much, getting me learn the early stages of doing it. I was this cocky little 22-year-old, and you know what I mean, and Brian as well. And it's just been around that. It was just it's just mind blowing, really.
Yeah, I was going to say obvious question. Obviously, what is it like being around someone like him? Is he like that all the time? Obviously, with that much energy. Is he a laugh all the time?
Yeah.
Or does he kind of tone it down?
No, I mean, it was always, and that's what it was. It's always been, it's quite lucky I was there at the start with Brian, at the start with Joe. So they've always been kind of mates rather than, anything else. I never looked at them in that respect.
Right.
I mean, they're both brilliant at what they do. And I mean, Brian's an amazing all-round performer, and so, as is Joe,
Yeah.
And I was just really lucky to be there and be around these guys, and to get so much knowledge from them as well. It's just amazing.
Yeah, as a kid, I know my sister, who I don't think she watches a lot of these, but I have a feeling she will watch this one, because we grew up together and we absolutely loved the Brian Conley Show. And, we used to watch it when it was on, and he had, it was, I think, one of the only live videos, DVDs that he had out was the Live and Dangerous show, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And we would watch that on repeat, to death, because we loved it so much. And, I cannot remember, what was Brian's character name when he did Larry the Loafer?
Nick Frisbee.
That's it, Nick Frisbee. Whenever that came on, I mean, it was one of the points at which we just came together and we would just laugh, because the way Brian treated Larry was disgusting, really, by today's standards. But just on that show, that Live and Dangerous show, you actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you get a little bit of TV time, because he kind of breaks down the fourth wall, doesn't he? And he actually just opens the door. That whole bit that led up to that, I'm glad I'm speaking to you, because I've always wondered this, and does this kind of thing happen? Was that planned? That little bit where you nick the bat off him?
I've always nicked the bat off him, and then what I used to do is stick it down the hole and hit me with it. Yeah. And every now and again, he'd pull me out from under the desk. But to make it work, because that's how we did it on the tour, but to make it work for the telly, he had this door put on the front of it. So all that bit was not planned, but I knew it was going to expose me a bit. But the bit that wasn't planned, there's a bit where Larry I have to do it like this, so like I've got him. Yeah. Larry would look down, and and I look at Brian like that, and that bit wasn't planned. That just came to me at the last minute, and that's always been my it's not a damn, but that's how my head works sometimes. Is that I'm a bit like you, so I never plan it, and especially with Joe and with Brian, I always do it. My thing's always be to try and make them guys laugh.
Awesome.
You know what I mean?
And you could almost tell that Brian wasn't expecting that as well, because his reaction is just fantastic. Just creases
and it's just like little bits like I love bits like that, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but that's the beauty of it. And doing the same with doing stuff with Joe, that's what I love, the way we used to bounce off each other and the way we do stuff together. It's just excellent.
Did you get any injuries from the fact? Did he actually properly whack you sometimes with that bat?
It didn't hurt that much. The bit that hurt me the most was when I did Larry for about 3 or 4 years. I actually ended up with like a big lump on the end of my wrist, like a calcium building up. I was doing it all the time. But apart from that, I mean, I love doing it as well. I'm just so lucky that I got a chance to, to do. And it was such a. I mean, I used to love. I remember we did one. I remember writing a sketch. And Colin put all the bits together, but one of the gags I had was that Larry would have a business. Larry started this new business, but the end of it was that Larry's gone bankrupt, and then Brian went, he's gone into liquidation. And I just remember him taking him off my hand and putting him in a blender, and it was just things like, just random stuff like that coming to my head, and I just like, again, it's that anarchic and just being a little kid, like who puts a puppet in the blender.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And you helped write a lot of that, did you say?
Just little, not loads. I did little gags, so I'd come up with little ideas for bits of Larry, little sketches, and a couple of little bits for James Brown. But again, at the time, Colin was the main writer on it, so I go to Colin with a few gags and ideas that I had, and then he'd put them in and work that the sketch around it. So the idea about Larry having this business, and there's another one where we had Larry as a pin-up. I come up with this idea as Larry as a pin-up, and then we just basically staple gunned him to the set. I remember doing that as well,
brilliant.
Stuff like that. It was just what can we do to him? You know what I mean? And we had several Larrys. I did the actual Larry that I used, and then there was several stunt Larrys because he got set on fire and blended and mashed and mashed.
Oh no! as kids, again, I was probably about 10 years old or so when we were watching the Brian Conley Show. So we were watching these kids' TV programs, the actual kind of ones that they were basing that on. We were watching those in the morning and then watching, Larry the Loafer get the hell beaten out of him in the evening. And we were laughing at both, it's fantastic. So
that's great. It was just, and again, it was, I think Brian came up with the character and it was just, I just loved the idea of it, the concept of it as well. It's just such a funny idea, it's good.
So we go on from there. I guess then was Raynard in your time with Joe after Brian Conley, or were you working side by side?
I mean, basically, my job's always been, I've never been a performer. Ironically, I've always been the other side of the camera. So I do a lot of stage management, production management. I've always done a lot of writing. I've written a couple of tours. I did a couple of Sooty shows that went out and a Rainbow live show that went out.
We'll touch on those.
Being a DJ.
That's my child as well. So yeah, I want to know more about that in a bit. So
yeah, I was really lucky at getting to do them. But basically what happened was Brian was going into Jolson and part of my job was I was like his PA. So I'd, make his cup of tea in the morning or do stuff like that. And as he said, I'm going into the West End for you. There's not going to be a hell of a lot for you to do. Do you want to do it? And I went, well, to be fair, mate, it's not really what I'm about. I don't know if I can sit in a theatre for that long, just making, making you a cup of tea and going out, oh, do you want a jacket potato for your lunch or whatever? And, and at the time, we've been working with on tour with a lady called Hilary O'Neill. Used to do a show called Copycats, but she's like a female impressionist. She's brilliant, Hill. She's been about for years. And she was Joe's support. And at the time, Joe, luckily, I'd done one Royal Variety Show at the time with Brian as Larry. And in that time, we shared a dressing room. It was me, Brian, Shane Ritchie, Bradley Walsh, Joe, Frank Carson. Wow. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, this is mental. This is my life, which is just brilliant. And so I got to meet Joe then. And Hilary said, well, I know Ray was working because I was filming the Brian Conley Show at the time while Joe was touring. Joe's tour manager had gone on holiday, and Hilary said, well, I know Ray's not, he's only doing, because we'd film on a Saturday night, and now we'd do a rehearsal on a Saturday and film on a Sunday for Brian's show, and it went out the following Saturday. So they said to me, she said, well, Ray's free during the week. Do you want to try him out? And he was like, yeah, I'll give him a go for 2 weeks. So he phoned Brian up out of courtesy and just said, do you mind if I borrow Ray? And Brian was like, yeah, no worries, that's cool. And he said, get him to come out in a pair of pants. He'll do that for a laugh. And Joe was like, all right, yeah, nice one. So basically, Joe said, well, I'll go and do a couple of dates. And then a couple of dates turned into 23 years. So
wow.
It was just, and again, I met up with Joe and we've got so much in common and our humour is such, I started talking about Pee-wee, like I just said, and Joe loved Pee-wee and everything we talked about, we were on the same page really with everything. So we've always shared such a similar sort of sense of humour, which is why it worked so well with us. And from day one, we've been able to, if I go somewhere with something, and 9 times out of 10, Joe doesn't know where I'm going to go with it, but he'll just go, I'll go somewhere with it. And it always kind of worked well because he could bounce back with me, and then we just had that bounce off each other, and it just worked so well. So yeah, it started with just Hilary, bless her. Again, I owe her a lot, suggesting me, and from there, I stayed with him for like 23 years.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I remember again earliest memories of Reynards. I was given, I think it was the Bubble and Squeak VHS.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I just I discovered Joe through a school friend of mine. He loved him. He'd seen him on a couple of shows like Des O'Connor or something, and he had this new video out, so my mum bought it me for Christmas, and it was one of those where I sat there and I just laughed and then I put it on again because he was so different, but as soon as he opened his mouth you laugh anyway, but then he brings you out. So he was that, do you remember, was that one of the earliest points? Because he introduced you as like his something special, his new sort of part of the show. That one. Was that one of the first ones that you did with him?
Yeah, that was completely the first one that we did. Yeah, I had hair and everything then.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that your real hair? That's quite.
That was my real hair.
Wow.
Yeah. What was left of it? Bless it. But it was one of the first ones we've done, and we just, again, it was a bit similar to with Brian, who used to come out and dance, but he just said, if I come out and do this, I don't know what we're going to do with it. I'll just introduce you. And we just used to come out and dance with each other. And again, it was it just made him laugh and it made me laugh. And that's how a lot of our stuff started.
Yeah.
We used to do stuff when I first started working with him. We used to go, he'd go, we'd do like these odd holiday camps and places like that. But no one knew not a lot of people know I am anyway, but people that hadn't seen Joe or hadn't seen me do Brian, they didn't know me with Joe at that point because it was just Joe Pasquale.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of stuff like just sit in the audience in my granddad's suit randomly, just sit there with the people watching with the punters, and I just sit there. And then halfway through Joe's act, I'd get up and start trying to do card tricks with the band. And Joe's just going, "Who's this bloke?" And the band didn't know I was because they hadn't seen me at sound check.
Okay.
And so me and Joe used to just do it just to mess with everybody's heads for a little bit. And that's how it all kind of started with Raynard. I just used to come up and I'd just go up to the band and go, "All right, is this your card?" And he'd be like, "Who are you, mate?" And I'm going, "Is this your card?" And start mucking about with Joe's props, and Joe just go, "Oh, who's this bloke?" And just, and that's how it all kind of, and it was all just basically initially to make me and him, and it always has been to make me and him laugh, And the beauty of it is, I like to think because we had that innocence and and it is a very natural thing. It's never been put on with me and Joe that the audience sharing that, like everyone's in on this in gag, what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just grew and grew and grew, And to be fair, I never thought, because as I say, I'm not I've never been a performer. That's why I've always preferred the writing side of stuff because I'm quite a shy person.
Sure.
Really, believe it or not.
You wouldn't know it.
But with Raynard, it's not me, it's him. I let him out the cave. Don't you imagine? And I go out and there he is, and I'll become him, and I loved it because I can be this other person.
Yeah, it's like putting a mask on, isn't it? So
it is, It is,
That's
or brilliant. A large pair of pants.
I mean, you did some pretty epic stuff with them. I mean, a couple that I can think of off the top of my head. Diet Coke break. That was good.
Yeah.
And was it you did like a double what they call it, like life not life jacket, sort of escapology
straight jacket routine.
Straight jacket, where you just were left squirming on the stage.
On the floor.
Yeah. Do you have like a personal kind of favorite over all the gags that you did together? Have you got one that really sort of sticks with you?
My favorite has always been, we do a hand chopper routine. I don't know if you've seen that one, where I put my hand into this box and then Joe puts a blade through it. He's like hypnotized me, and I sort of go,
I think,
and the gag is, and it's got like, it looks like there's my hands here sort of thing like this, and it's like basically Joe's chopped my hand off, and then as I go down like that, the blade falls out, and they realise it's not my hand because I slip my hand through to pick up the blade. But I think that's my favourite routine, and we've done a few magic conventions where it's got serious magicians in it, and the amount of times I've been shouted at by magicians for giving away the gags. We did a levitation thing where he puts me on a plank and a balloon on the end of it, and the idea is you pull the chair away. Normally the trick would be the plank would stay there, but when we did it, Waze did it so that the plank fell down. But then as I was walking off stage, I'd actually attach a plank properly, and it would just sit there like rigid like this.
Okay.
Again, we gave away so many different illusions. We got told off so much.
But at that point, they had the masked magician on TV. You can't blame you for that. You'd already given.
Oh no, completely. He was doing it. We actually got I think we did a gag about the masked magician, and they wrote to us and tried to sue us for me doing a gag about it. Yeah. We were like, seriously, we don't think that, you know what I mean? It was like me mucking about, and we didn't mention him. It just like, and then he'd go, "Oh, it's just you idiot," like that. And because I put on this pretend mask and was running around pretending to be like a masked magician, like we got in trouble for that one.
Some people have got no sense of humour, have they? So
no, exactly. You know what I mean?
He brought you back as well when he moved on to like Price is Right. I understand. I must admit I didn't watch a lot of it when he did it, but I understand he brought you back for some of that as well. Yeah,
that was good. I loved it in the Price is Right. Again, that was down to, we had a brilliant producer, that guy called Dave Morley. Because when Joe won the Jungle, because it kind of reinvigorated his career. At that point, we did 2 or 3 pilots, which was for me again, was just amazing. I'm this little kid. We did one for a daytime talk show, which never happened. And then we did one called Ready Steady Joe, and that was produced by the guys that did Anzac Saturday Night Takeaway.
Okay, yeah.
And that was really good. That was billed as a big Saturday night show, and they had me suspended off, and everyone would bring in this something from home and pull it in this skip. And they had me suspended on this skip in a big pair of pants, and they dropped me in it. and whatever I pulled out was the person that came down to take part in the games, and we did the pilot, and it was a really clever concept. And basically, I was the one that picked everybody that came down, and it went really well. But they didn't pick it up because I think at the time the head of ITV comedy changed from one person to another, and the person that commissioned the pilot wasn't the same person that would be doing the show. And like everything, they have their own ideas of what they want. So they offered Joe The Price is Right. I know, it was a shame. I mean, it was such a funny idea. But yeah, that idea for The Price is Right. And then Dave said, we've got this idea. We want you to be one of the male models in it and just try and have a bit of a spin on it. Are you up for it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm up for that, mate. Of course I am.
It's your standard response to everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, that was just immense for me, because I think we did 150 episodes in the end. Again, it was just one of the things you don't expect to do. So I came on like we did. I come on as a yodeler when we were doing like Cliffhanger. So I'd come in and yodel through that. And whenever we're doing a new game, it'd always be me that demonstrated the game and get it from a course. So I was like a darts player. But a lot of the time they'd use me for the modelling, which is quite funny because I'm next to proper. Like he's like this chiseled chin bloke, and these girls all dressed up doing it, and there I am in a bath demonstrating the television or something. I mean, it was just good. I mean, but again, the great thing with that was I had the opportunity of working with Dave, and then what I'd do is twice a day I'd interview the audience that were coming down. So again, as a laugh, they pretend I was this TV producer, and they called me Tart Queen or something every day, put a different name on it. So as people come through, probably giving away a trade secret, but as people come through, you interview them and you decide who's going to come down. So I would go, they were really interesting. They got a good story there. And then I go back to Joe and go, right, we're getting a hairdresser down, so you can do the gag about, I was at the hairdresser's once, and I said to her, I'd like some highlights. So she took me around the back and showed me a video of all her best haircuts. You'd see something and go, right, we'll do that gag there. And that, I mean, again, that was brilliant. So I'd do that, and then they'd have me just, again, me being Raynard, doing all the other stuff. But we filmed it in Manchester, and it was next door to when Jeremy Kyle was still going. And at the time, so at the time, one of his audience, we don't know how it happened, but one of the audience members managed to make off with a dining room table and 6 chairs. So after that, we had to barrow it all off. But he used to come and watch the end of it, and he was such a nice bloke as well, to be fair. He used to come and watch it, and what are you doing today? And we'd tell him what the gags were and all of that, and he used to come and watch the end of the show and stuff. It was brilliant.
That's brilliant.
But yeah, Price was Right was great, and I used to do a lot of stuff like I'd like when they'd finish filming, like they go cut, and I'd do things like I always do, just being me. I'd kick my pants off and get out the and they'd go, oh, brilliant, you know what I mean? And then they could cut that into the to the show. If there's a gag in there that wasn't really funny, there'd be the audience falling over, and it'd probably be me, a shot of me walking out, you know what I mean? Again, it was just again so lucky that they just everyone's always kind of said to me, just do what you want to do, and sometimes it makes it into the edit and sometimes it don't, but I've always been lucky in the respect that they know it's getting Raynard as well sometimes, because some people aren't quite sure of him, but once they get him, it's that child again, being a kid, sort of things I would have done as a kid at school, would be naughty,
That's cool. I was going to ask actually, how much freedom did you have with the character to kind of, because I guess like all of it was you developed it, or did anyone sort of give you any ideas to go on at some point that you kind of ran with?
No, I mean, basically it just spawned, because if you watch the early videos of Joe, Raynard never spoke. It was all about facial expressions, and a lot of stuff I did initially with Raynard, he never really spoke. And then one tour, I think we just tried it on a couple of bits, and it kind of got a laugh. It was like, we'll keep this in, and it was just all the gags that we used to do. Me and Joe, funny enough, we were talking about this the other day, and going, God, some of the stuff we used to get away with was just mental. You know what I mean? Some of the stuff we used to do with him. And again, and the great thing with me was obviously with Raynard, when I initially did him, I used to have a rubber band around my nose like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but we had to stop it after a while because I started getting nosebleeds with it, because it was up for so long like this. In the end, we had to calm it down a little bit. So we calmed it down for The Price is Right and stuff and all that, and which is good for me, because it became more about me
You,
doing it,
yeah,
Raynard and
yeah,
stuff, and it, it was just the luxury of that, really.
yeah. Did you
So
have
no, it's quite
any?
cool.
Did you or have you got any plans of breaking Reynard off on his own for some sort of spin-off?
Funny enough, I did a lot of tours with the Chuckle Brothers
Oh,
again
okay.
in my wearing my other hat as a tour manager and stuff. I used to tour manage the Chuckle, so I did a lot of their shows,
Mm.
sort of late 2000, 2008 through to about 2012. And again, Paul and Barry, such lovely guys to work with. And there was a guy on there, one of their writers is a gentleman by the name of John Sale, amazing writer, done a lot of stuff for Mr. Tumble, done a lot of kids shows and stuff.
Okay,
And he
yeah.
always liked Raynard. He always thought Raynard was great. So we had this idea of coming up with a show called Reynard's World. Again, a bit like, I suppose, because of my influence with Pee Wee Herman and stuff.
Yeah.
And we were kind of in talks of doing little bit of pieces like that, but it never kind of transpired.
Okay.
But I've always had my own. I'd always like to take Raynard out again because I don't think he's finished. To be fair,
No.
And I've always wanted to do stuff with Reynard, but it's whether I feel because I'm quite insecure with stuff like that. I'm always thinking, oh, I don't want to come and see him. I don't know whether it would work.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always wanted to do like an adult kid show. If that makes sense.
I was going to say you've got the generation who's already familiar with him. Like say, my age.
Yeah, bless you.
They would be gladly, watch that. I would.
And I might just try it as a one-off. And what I've always liked with Raynard is he's cross-generational, and I've always liked the fact that quite young kids like him as well. Yeah. And I like the fact they can interact with me, and it's a great introduction. Like with yourself, introducing kids into comedy.
Yeah.
With something like what I do, and the fact that they go around imitating me, I just find it quite humbling. You know what I mean? And like yourself asking me to do this interview, I've never thought of myself as that kind of person. I've always just enjoyed doing what I do as a laugh, and I've just been really lucky. You know what I mean?
It's one of the lines I think that I kept repeating once I saw that show was Joe's reaction when he brings you out, because he introduces you as his twin brother, and then he just turns to the audience and he just says, as you can see, we're not identical twins. And I just think it was that kind of thing. And then I think there was a guy in the front row who must have shouted something out about you having the same nose, and it's Joe bouncing off him, basically saying, do you want to punch in the mouth, sir? So, and I just, that whole exchange, it seemed so organic because he was literally interacting with the crowd as well. It's that kind of thing. And I think in sort of later shows I saw where you came on, you got as much as a reaction as Joe did.
He always shocked me. To be fair, it's always shocked me because, again, as I say, when we go and do the holiday camps or we go and do corporates, they don't really know who Raynard is. And 9 times out of 10, I just come out and they just go, who's this strange bloke dancing around? And we do, I don't know if you've seen the ball and cloth routine where Joe holds the cloth up and he pulls it away, and I've just got a big ball on my head and I just pick up and walk off. And again, stuff like that, which I find really funny. But again, if you don't know Raynard is, this geezer's a bit of an idiot. What's he doing? But I've always been so humbled by the fact that when I used to go out the reaction I used to get, I never expected it, especially on the tours with Joe. It's just, it's immense. And for someone like me, that only fuels me more, you know what I mean? Because if you're getting a reaction out of doing a routine, and that's why sometimes I was just like, get off, because I just want to stay out there and do more, But it's great because he'd always just say to me, there was never any set stuff. We just, like on Joe's set list, he'll go, I do this, 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 and this. And then I'll bring you out. And it'd never say, I want you to do this. But we'd always have a gag where we would have a tag, whether it be the arm chopper or the ball on the head.
Yeah.
Or I think we've done a couple of things where he hypnotised me before and have like a pretend Raynard doll where he threw it in there with the straight jacket routine. So we'd always have like a beginning and an end. But in between that, it was just kind of whatever I wanted to do and whatever random words I'd want to come out with him, So again, it's just been quite lucky with all of that, really. And I always find it quite humbling and it's nice to make people laugh, and it's just you can do that. It's brilliant, isn't it?
And well, you did, because it's things that I still go back and in my mind, those to me are my golden age of comedy was that when I was growing up and I was kind of discovering it for myself, and it was Brian, it was Joe, it was you, Freddie Starr. That was sort of the ones that I always watch the most. So let's delve into a couple of things quickly that you mentioned earlier on that I found out about earlier on when I listened to another interview that you've done, Sooty and Rainbow. Again, you know, massive Sooty. I was a massive Sooty fan when I grew up. I'm trying to get my kids into it. They're a bit past it now, so I've missed that boat, unfortunately.
Oh, bless you.
I understand. Is it sort of the writing side that you've done for a couple of the tours for them rather than the TV?
Yeah, I didn't do any of the telework. I did more of the tours. It's actually when they were with a company called Hit. And I worked with a guy called Jonathan Blazer at the time who was producing the shows. And he'd heard that I'd written some stuff, and he said, would I ever go writing a Sooty show? And I went, yeah, great. So I wrote a couple of Sooty shows, which was brilliant, getting a chance of that. And he also got the rights to Rainbow. And I was asked to write a Rainbow show as well, which I did. And he initially did one show, which didn't quite work for him. So he said, would I have a look at it? And I did. And then it was great because I then got to put in some of the humour that I was working with on Joe and rework it in a different way. So it would go across to the younger kids, you know, and I loved doing that. I got told off a bit with Hit a few times with Sooty because I kept putting in gags that would go over the kids' heads. One of them was like a magic show at the beginning. And I go, oh, look, Sooty's wand. One of the gags was the presenter would go, oh, look, mums and dads, Sooty's wand's gone floppy. Nobody likes a floppy wand, do they, mums and dads? Like that. And they were like, no, you can't do that in a kids show. And I'm like, oh, great. And at the time, there was a Brazilian cat in it called Mickey. And they said, and I had her coming on going, hi, Sooty, me love you long time. And they were like, no. I'm like, okay, you know.
You say that though, but I've watched, me and my wife have watched back the old stuff that I grew up with, and there's bits in there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And when he had it was brilliant. And that's what I watched. I watched a lot of the old Matthew Corbett stuff. I was like, this is great. I'm going to, you know, I can incorporate this. But because it was so corporate at the time, you couldn't do it. But now it's been, funny enough, I did Panzer with him about 3 years ago, and he's a lovely, lovely bloke, a guy called Richie Goodell. He now owns the rights to Sooty, so it's become more of that kind of, again, it's still aimed at kids, but there is some stuff in there for the adults as well. And he's such a brilliant magician, Richard. But again, writing the two Sooty shows that I did was, you know, for me was just amazing being able to work on them. And then the Rainbow show again, which is brilliant, you know, writing lines for Bungle, Zippy and George and stuff. It's just, you know, it's all about, I did it all about, when I did, it was called Zippy Superstar DJ. And it was all about Zippy becoming this DJ, you know, winning this talent competition and going off. And I remember we opened Act 2 with him doing a massive rap and stuff. It was just brilliant, you know, writing this really funny Zippy rap and stuff that didn't rhyme, because I quite like that, you know, when you write a song, the last word doesn't rhyme for some, just the way my head works. I mean, sometimes I do gags with Joe. I do gags with Joe, and it's just like, seriously, Ray, I don't even get that. Like, I'm laughing. But in my head, it's funny, but maybe that's just the medication I'm on.
Oh well, maybe. It's great to see that you know, shows like Sooty and Rainbow still have some kind of relevance. You know, even sort of now, the last sort of 10 years or so, they're trying to find this new audience. And again, I think there's this generation like me of parents who grew up with it that would happily watch it. You know, and take the kids to it. You know, we got a theme park close by to us, which we have an annual pass to now, but the year before we got that, and before we ever went, they had Sooty down there, and it was my dream to take them to that, and I missed it. But
bless you, man.
You know, one day, you never
know. Definitely. I mean, again, I say Richard's out touring at the moment. I think he's going out again this year with Sooty again. And if you do get a chance to take kisses, it's brilliant. I know it's cross-generational, as you say. It's where it all starts for you. I mean, I used to love Jamie and the Magic Torch, is one of the ones I liked as a kid. And stuff like that, you know. And again, and I've just recently done a Danger Mouse show as well a couple of years ago for someone. So that was quite nice as well. Right, and you know, again, Danger Mouse is, you know, so iconic with David Jason and stuff. And I'm being lucky to, you know,
the good old days.
Really lucky. Definitely.
I mean, kids TV that my kids grew up with, they're 7 now. So when they were kind of getting into TV, it was CBeebies on loop, you know, Mr. Tumble, and whatever else it was. But you know, I just was there was almost something missing that I felt I had back then. You know, they tried to relaunch these other shows, and they're not quite the same. But then that's just me.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Hanging on.
It's anarchy, isn't it? It's like I grew up on Tiswas. I was a massive fan of Tiswas, and watching that with my dad. And I've been lucky again that I've got to work with Clive Webb, who was on Tiswas quite a lot, as one of the regulars. So I've worked with Clive quite a bit, and he's just as mental as he was on Tiswas as he is now. And him and his son is a guy called Danny Adams, and I think Danny's got a show on CBBC now called Danny and Mick, where they run like a leisure centre. And again, and Danny's he's a great physical comic as well. And Danny gets a lot of that from, obviously his dad Clive. And again, so lucky to work with people like that. And that knowledge, that fountain of knowledge. You know what I mean?
Just soak it up, don't you? I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about obviously the notable things that you've done. What else have you done kind of in between and sort of more up to date? Sort of what are you doing, keeping yourself busy these days?
Well, basically, I work at Wolverhampton Grand Theatre now. I'm head of stage here, so I've always been, as I say, behind the scenes and stuff. So that's more what I do now. What sort of work at the Grand, but I want to get back into doing stuff like that. I've got a few ideas for kids shows and also some ideas for dramas and stuff. But it's just finding the time to put it in. And I've never done a drama before because I've always done the comedy side of stuff. But I was speaking to Joe the other day. Funny enough, we still talk a lot. But I talked about maybe going out and doing a couple of dates with him again because we just like to go out and we do miss it. It's just mates having a laugh doing that again. And obviously, like yourself, I think it's amazing that you've done like a kids book and stuff. It's something that I'd like to look into as well. Write something like that.
I started off with horror.
Did you?
Horror fiction, but then my kids came along, and I think it was all the stuff I was being subjected to through them, all the kids' stories I was reading them and the kids' TV, and it just kind of clicked, and I had so much fun with it. And I probably had I've had the warmest reaction to that. I've had more of a reaction to that because I think there's just a much bigger audience out there for it. And I'm hoping to do it. I'm working on another one at the minute. It's just trying to get it out there. That's
amazing though.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, Joe's written. Have you read Joe's book, the Dead Knobs and Doomsticks?
I haven't yet. No, I have heard of it.
They're quite funny. They're quite adult, to be fair. They're not. They're not the things you could give to your kids. I think he's done 2 of them, but it's definitely worth having a look at if you get a chance. They're quite funny.
Definitely.
But there's something I'd definitely like to do is to do that, or again, as I say, Reynards world, something that I've always wanted to do and try and get back into. I've actually got event puppet as well that I had made years ago, especially for the Pumpernickel, and he's got one teddy bear arm. Again, it's just random stuff that I like, but so it's, I'd like to get back into it again. It's just finding the time there,
Yeah, well, it'd be great to see any of that come to fruition, for you.
Oh, cheers, man.
I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. And I'm trying to rack my brain. I saw I met my wife sort of 21 years ago. On our 1-year anniversary, I think it was, of being together, she bought me tickets to see Joe Pasquale down here in Torquay. And I can't remember whether this would have been 2001. I don't know whether you were there or not. I'm trying to rack my brain whether you would have been.
Yeah, I would have been with him. Yeah, it would have been at the Princess. Torquay. That's brilliant theatre. I love it. Martin's stage manager there. It's great. I love it down in Torquay. It's such a beautiful place. Yeah, and such a wonderful theatre as well. Yeah, we've done it a few times. We did a summer season there a few times. I'm not sure whether it was 2001 that we were doing I don't think it was then. I think it was just me and Joe coming out. I would have been there, I think, doing stuff. Okay,
because it was supported by Jimmy Cricket and the Nolans. I remember that much.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was company manager of it. Yeah.
Oh, was you? Oh, awesome.
I was company manager. That's what they did a lot. I'd company manage the show, put it together, and then I would come on and do. I did do a little bit with Joe on that one. We probably did.
Yeah, I thought there was a moment. Yeah, it's a long time ago. I've done a lot since then, unfortunately.
Oh no, you do. I'm the same. You know what I mean? And it's like with Joe, people say gags to me that I've done with Joe, and I go, yeah, that's quite funny. I'll have to do that again. You know what I mean?
So I mean, Ray, this has been absolutely amazing speaking to you. I feel like I could probably do another show with you about other things that come to mind. But no, thank you for your time. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that I haven't asked you, to be honest with you. I think I've pretty much covered. Are there any comedy heroes that you've got of like present day? Anyone that you sort of stop and would watch that you as much as you would?
Yeah, again, like people like Ramesh Ranganathan. I've been watching him. I quite like him. Just listen to his audio books. I think he's brilliant. And again, he seems quite a humble person, and it comes across that he's, his beginnings and stuff. If you listen to what he's done, where he used to be a teacher, I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, Massey, I've just been watching. Gary King. It's on BBC. I've just been watching
King
that
Gary.
comedy.
Yeah, we've just been watching
King
that.
Gary.
Yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
And Tom Davis, he's just, that kind of stuff again. But yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. And I like Simon Day as well, who plays his dad, obviously, he was in the Fire Show and stuff. And he's just great in it.
Yeah.
That makes me laugh at the moment. So they're kind of the things that I'm into at the moment. They sort of really make me laugh.
Cool. Sounds like we're on the same page, actually, because I mean, we were almost waiting for the new series of King Gary to come out once the first one finished.
I was the same. I was itching. Yeah, it's great. And same again. I'm like, come on. And again, Ramesh is in that, and the way their banter between them, because
it's great.
I watched Judge Ramesh, and he plays like the clerk on it, doesn't he, Tom Davis? Have you ever seen Judge Ramesh on Dave?
Oh no, I ain't got Dave anymore. Actually, I must have missed out on that.
Yeah, if you watch it, I think they do that on their box sets and their catch up. It's called Judge Ramesh, and it's a bit like Judge Rinder, but basically Tom Davis would be the person that brings them into court, and it'd just be petty arguments, but it's quite funny again, and the banter they have between each other on that. So I'm guessing I don't know if that's where they first met or they've been. I think he was a stand-up, but again, I just find them both quite funny,
That's cool.
And Jimmy Carr and people like that.
It took me a while to warm to Jimmy Carr, I must admit. When he first came out, I wasn't too sure, but I
you get there, didn't you? Well,
they do that. The one that I've watched most of, Bill Bailey, some years ago. I was big on Bill because he's so intelligent with it. He'd make you stop and think on some of the stuff he was saying. And I moved over then to Rod Gilbert just because I loved his anger. His Welsh anger.
I love Rod Gilbert. He's brilliant. Yeah, we've got him. Fun enough, where I work, I'm quite lucky in that respect now that a lot of them, before I tour into venues, and now we've got like Rod Gilbert coming in a few months to the ground, and he came in, and we have like a charity show where we have a lot of comics on and stuff. And he came in then, and again I'm like Greg Davis as well. I like. Man Dan. I don't know if you've ever watched Man Dan.
I've watched a couple and never made it through the whole series, but I meant to go back to it at some point.
I love that again because again Rick Mal in the first before he passed on, but playing his dad in the way that he just fights him just as a giant bear. It's just I just love all that randomness. But brilliant. This is my problem. I go off on tangents. I don't know where it started.
That's all right. That's brilliant. Like, just to close things up. So, anyone else out there who wants to keep up with what you're doing, get in touch, whatever. Where can they find you? Are you on social media?
The only thing I kind of do, really, to be fair, is I'm only on Twitter. So I'm at Ray Tizzard on Twitter. You can see what I'm up to on there. I do the odd bits and pieces. I'm going to try and get back into it a bit more. I'm looking because everyone's doing this. I've never done TikTok or I had a YouTube channel for a bit, but I did a couple of bits on that. But I might start doing some more YouTubey stuff and maybe do Raynard interviewing a few people or something like that. Maybe might be a bit random. I know it's been done before, like as Partridge and things, but if I did it, it'd just be really random.
That'd be worth watching. Absolutely. Ray Tizzard, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute honour. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure, man. I'm chuffed that you asked me. No, it's been great talking to you, Chris.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. But all the best with everything, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on you. Keep in touch. So.
No, nice one, man. Yeah, definitely. We'll have to do something again soon next year.
Catch up. Absolutely. Thank you, bud.
Take care, man.
Cheers, mate.
Bye, mate.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram to keep updated about all future shows.